Welcome along to Film Talk. I'm Richard Edwards, and I'm delighted to say I'm joined yet again by the wonderful Mark Priest. Mark, welcome to Film Talk.
Thank you very much, Richard.
Good to see you again.
Thank you.
And today we're talking about probably one of the greatest film franchises of all time. Now, there's a few of those, and we'll probably be covering all of those in time.
Absolutely.
But we're looking at the Indiana Jones movies, would you believe? All three, well, the fourth if you want to be, you have to, and rumours of a fifth. So there's quite a lot to talk about.
Yes, lots of interest in that. Definitely.
So hang on to your hats and your whips, because over the next 15, 20 minutes, we're going to be talking about Indiana Jones.
No time to argue. Throw me the idol. I throw you the whip.
Give me the whip.
Adios, señor.
So there we are. Indiana Jones doesn't get any better than that. Raiders of the Lost Ark from 1981, the starting point for the franchise. And interestingly, it's 40 years now, 40 years in July of this year that film was released. And Paramount are doing something very special to celebrate the 40th anniversary, and also bringing out a special 4K restoration of the four films so far in the franchise. I mean, how exciting is that?
Well, I am super excited about that, Richard. I really am, because, being an indie fan for so long, and have got the VHS of, the Raiders. I've got the original DVD. I've actually got the Blu-ray set of all the indie films. So the 4K is like the holy grail, to take a pun.
I mean, it almost sounds like you're a bit of a fanatic with all that different kind of home entertainment version and media of the franchise.
Well, I didn't mention that both you and I also had Laserdisc versions. When you were up against VHS at the time, or Betamax, Laserdisc was, the revolutionary, wasn't it?
It was. I mean, in the early 1980s, remember, we both had Laserdisc machines. And remember seeing the Star Wars and all sorts of great movies that we could rent on Laserdisc from that shop down the high street. We mustn't mention the name, but remember them. I wonder if they're still going. But I actually owned Raiders of the Lost Ark on Laserdisc. It was absolutely astonishing. The image looked so crisp and vibrant compared to VHS, but the sound was magnificent. It was wonderful to listen to on stereo speakers at home. Yes,
it really introduced me to the quality of hi-fi music and sound on film, because you just didn't get that previously. But the size of those machines, you can almost break your back putting it onto a table. It was enormous, wasn't it?
Size of a suitcase.
Yeah, exactly. But for film fans like yourself and myself and others, it was the natural progression towards DVDs.
Ending up with DVD.
Jones, do you realize what the Ark is? It's a transmitter. It's a radio for speaking to God.
An army which carries the Ark before it is invincible.
So what does Indiana Jones as a franchise mean to you, though, Mark? Why is it important?
Well, I think basically it's pure escapism. It's just for 2 hours you can go into a fantastic, hopefully a cinema, or you can watch it at home, and you can be just taken off into a world of make-believe, which has got excitement, it's got romance, it's got a great story, the music, it's got a whole package there. It's just, you can watch it over and over again. And I know many people love the Indiana Jones films because they are timeless, actually. And for me personally, I think it goes back to, when it first came out in 1981. I'd read a lot about, well, obviously I was a Star Wars fan, big time. And, and there's always rumors coming out for a few years about George Lucas, Spielberg getting together to do this sort of, this character. And it was still starting to build up the atmosphere and the tension, but way before it was released. And I was fortunate enough to go with my sister to the Odeon Leicester Square in London, the day after the main premiere. And we went to see it, made a day of it. And I don't know if you've ever been to that cinema, Richard. I'm sure you have. It's
I saw Moonraker there.
Oh, wow. Yes. Well, I think I've been there half a dozen times in total. It's just amazing cinema. But just the thought of all those stars being in those seats as well, watching the film the day before, I was absolutely blown away by Indiana Jones, and probably wanted to be him, to be honest, actually afterwards for a short while. It was fantastic. A natural progression from Star Wars as well. Really exciting stuff.
Because I do remember a time in the early 80s when we had to call you Indy.
You're the only one that called me that.
Was I the only one who did that? I'm sure somebody else must have done as well.
I didn't have the hat and I didn't have the whip.
So you say, yeah.
But yes, it was a great time as well. And it's easy to say this, but 40 years ago, I always think about this when you watch a film. Just imagine what people were thinking 40 years ago when they hadn't seen anything like that before. I was blown away. Everybody was blown away by Raiders. It was a fantastic concept, and it really, really worked. What I really liked as well was there's a lot of British interest, a lot of British actors, a lot of technical stuff. It was filmed in Elstree Studios that we both know well. And so it had that sort of, I felt it belonged to us, even though it's an American movie, but it felt very British as well in many ways. So it added an awful lot to the whole concept.
And Elstree Studios are rightly a huge supporter and fan and appreciate George Lucas, because he really saved the studios when he brought Star Wars there in 76. They filmed in 76, released in 77. The studio was close to closure and really down on his uppers, as it were. And bringing that movie there, all 3 Star Wars films, all 3 Indiana Jones films, the first 3 Indiana Jones films, really saved. And we've wandered around the George Lucas soundstage, which wasn't there at the time, but was kind of built in honor, named in honor of George Lucas, who did so much to save those studios. So when we talk about Indiana Jones, I mean, what we're talking about is Raiders of the Lost Ark from 81, Temple of Doom, I think, from 84, Last Crusade from 89. Sorry, I'm not checking my notes. The Crystal Skull from 2008, and now rumours of a 5th one. We've already started talking about Raiders, and that was a really important movie and groundbreaking in so many ways. And then came Temple of Doom 3 years later, which didn't seem to get quite the same reaction. Very successful film, but didn't quite get the same reaction.
If adventure has a name, it must be Indiana Jones.
The figures at the end of the day proved it was very successful. It didn't quite work for me personally. In some regards, I thought some of the characters weren't quite appropriate or relevant. And it didn't have quite the feel of the first movie. It didn't flow as well. And actually, if you look back at it now, it kind of does look a bit out of date, actually, whereas Raiders and the others don't quite have that effect. I guess the production was under a lot of pressure because Raiders have been so popular that they kind of threw everything at it to try and make it as successful. But I think with George Lucas at the helm on the writing, what he says goes. He obviously felt that was an integral part of the movie. It would be successful, put bums on seats in the cinemas, and it obviously did. But to you and I, perhaps it didn't quite work as well.
A bit like Star Wars, the second chapter, Empire Strikes Back, was quite dark.
Yes.
But that was a continuous narrative, though. But they say, well, Temple of Doom, it was a dark chapter, just like Star Wars. But that wasn't a continuous narrative. I just thought they'd kind of try to move on the franchise, but what made it successful in the first film, they kind of missed out some of those elements, but brought them back in on the third film, which made Crusade such a tremendous success. I mean, Sean Connery as his father was perfect casting, wasn't he?
The quest for the Grail is not archaeology. It's a race against evil.
Germany has declared war on the Jones boys.
Those people are trying to kill us. I know, Dad!
Incredibly, there are actually only 12 years age difference between Harrison Ford and Sean Connery. You've got to ignore that part. But Sean Connery and Harrison Ford clearly got on really well, as they apparently did. And it just made that film fantastic. Right from the beginning, really exciting. River Phoenix in that opening clip. I just thought that was fantastic. I thought that was almost a film in itself. The rest of the film just flowed so perfectly. And of course, I think the other thing as well is that, you know, the Holy Grail was something that we'd all been brought up as children. You know, it was quite a significant thing. And of course, the Crusades. So they had all the elements to make it a great success, because it pulled on everybody's sort of history of, you know, of growing up and being aware of those sort of things. I loved it. It is one of my favorite films. It must be up there in the top 10, I would think. I love it. Great film.
So there they were, back fighting the Nazis again. Some kind of ghostly, mystical character that they were trying to get into here, Holy Grail, with the other one, it kind of almost religious elements to it. Kind of brought out what was really good and successful about the first film, then translated into the third film, and I think that made it a tremendous success.
Yeah, it just kept it rolling. Again, a good plot, good storyline. It kept moving direction as well. And you're right about the Nazis. You know, that was very kind of, you say, spooky. That they, and I think this is some truth behind it, that Hitler thought he was, you know, wanted God on his side, and was looking at sort of black magic and other things to sort of, you know, enhance the Third Reich. So there is some truth about it, and there's some great individual scenes in the film as well. And you know, that part where the burning the books, you know, which obviously did happen, but you know, really big significant part of the film, really exciting part of the film as well. But there's a lot of sadness and truth about that, which they managed to roll into the story.
John Williams is a really important composer, and the music is magnificent, isn't it?
The music's wonderful. In actual fact, I would say the Temple of Doom soundtrack is actually the best one.
Really?
Considering, yes, I really do. There's you know, it's got so many other elements to it, and not just parts from Raiders. But if you ever get a chance to listen to it specifically again, I think it's actually one of the best ones out of the four films.
I'm going to name check also Douglas Slocum, who was the cinematographer for the first three.
Yes.
He wasn't on the fourth film, but then in 2008 he would have been 95 years old. So it's, you know, he died when he was 103. So, you know, a very successful cinematographer, a great grounding working at Ealing Studios, some of those at Lavender Hill Mob, Titfield Thunderbolt, Kind Hearts and Coronets. Do you remember that famous scene in Kind Hearts and Coronets where Alec Guinness is playing, was it 6 or 8 characters, and they're all in church together? Douglas Slocum created that shot and filmed that by rolling the camera back, exposing another part of the frame, filming that, rolling the film back again in the camera, and kind of working through it step by step. A very imaginative, very creative cinematographer, and just a very talented guy. And also the same cinematographer all the way through, helped maintain the look and feel for those films.
Yeah, I know you're a big fan of his, actually, and so am I. But it's good to recognise him, actually, because very often we don't do that when we go to see a film. So you've got to say that, you know, credit where credit's due. It really did give that feel to the films that we all love.
This ain't gonna be easy. Not as easy as it used to be.
19 years later, they came up with the fourth film. And I think one critic wrote, well, you've had 19 years to come up with a good story. What happened, you know? It didn't quite seem to work out. It got a lot of negative criticism, although it did perform pretty well at the box office. So what's the ultimate measure?
Well, I think it's, again, we've talked about this before. If it was a standalone movie, it probably would have not had the same connotation that we've got, because we love indie and we love Raiders and, you know, all the other good bits about it. And I think they just, again, try to cram so much into the story. And from what I understand, you know, George Lucas, you know, he's such an influential person in Hollywood. He really wanted that story to be about aliens and sort of give it a 1950s, you know, the space alien meets the young boy type of approach. And I think Spielberg didn't really want to go down that route because he'd done E.T. and he just didn't want to do that again. So I think there was some conflict there, even though they probably would never admit it. And I think you can see that in the film. It's a bit disjointed. The CGI I find really disappointing. Why we kept seeing those golfers keep coming up is just doesn't make sense.
Was that a homage to Caddyshack, do you think?
It could be. It could be a homage to lots of different films. And even the opening sequence where the four young people are driving along with Elvis Presley playing, and they're trying to antagonize the Russians and the convoy. I remember thinking at the time, I don't understand what this is about, and actually you never do find out. So it was a superfluous opening 10 minutes.
I rewatched the film recently, as we all did, in preparation for this, and I was watching that scene thinking, is this some kind of homage to American Graffiti or something like that? And even if it was, what's the relevance here? How is that helping to move the story along? It didn't seem to really add anything. Yeah,
and again, when you've got like Cate Blanchett, fantastic as she is, and she just miscast in that character. I just thought that's a waste, actually, of the opportunity to make it a really good Indiana film.
I'm sure Shia LaBeouf is a really talented guy and a really nice fella, but that character that he portrayed, this kind of flick knife, kind of hooligan, based on Marlon Brando, it didn't work. That's not the actor's fault. You kind of perform the script you're given sometimes, but I just thought they were trying so many different things, and you had lots of elements that didn't combine to make a really strong film. Like in Raiders, everything worked. Here, it's just lots of bits that didn't just seem to gel together. It was a bit of a mess, really.
Yeah, it's just disappointing, and it's an okay film on its own. It's actually okay, and it's well worth watching. And I'm sure the 4K restoration will be fantastic. And there are some good bits in it, and good exciting bits in it. But unfortunately, you're going to compare it to the previous 3, of which 2 of those are probably in the top 10 films. It's very, very hard, but still a good film, probably in its own right.
Now, what won't be in the 4K restoration 40th anniversary box set, the complete story, is the 5th film. So I don't know if this is really the complete set, but obviously there'll be another 4K restoration coming out. But there's rumours of a 5th film, and there's been rumours of a 5th film for a long time. And it's been put off and delayed and delayed and delayed. But they are talking about, for 2022, a 5th Indiana Jones film. Apparently Harrison Ford is up for it. I think Steven Spielberg is not directing, but will be a hands-on producer. So there's people, some of the crew are still involved. Some of the old personalities are still involved. Do you think it will ever really see the light of day, though?
I think George Lucas is desperate to create a legacy of Indy moving on. And I think he would really like to see the character, albeit not perhaps with Harrison Ford, evolve into young Indiana Jones or something like that. I think he would like to see that continue. And from what I've read, where they've sort of been confused is they're trying to see it as a handover from Harrison Ford to a new person. And how they actually do that, that's going to be quite difficult, especially as Harrison Ford will be pretty close to being 80 by the time this film comes out. He still looks pretty damn good, but is it going to be his son, maybe, that he's going to hand over to? Don't know.
There was some suggestion at one stage that the character that Shia LaBeouf played in Crystal Skull might be the main character in the 5th film, but I think that's been dropped. And there was some talk of Harrison Ford coming out as Indy, but as Sean Connery did as the father. So he would be the father to the son or daughter, perhaps. Fingers crossed. Why not? We love the franchise. Absolutely. If there's a 5th film and it's great, it'd be wonderful. Love to see it.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I'd certainly be booked to go to see it as soon as it's released. So yes, it is exciting, actually. And again, that the legacy continues.
Your favourite moments, in summary? Pull out 1 or 2 favourite moments.
Raiders will always be my favourite, although there are lots of bits and lots of the other films that I love as well. But I'll always come back to Raiders, and in particular the part where the religious ceremony towards the end of the film, where Paul Freeman is going to reveal the Ark to everybody. It's an incredibly exciting part of the film. The music and the special effects, the sound effects are incredible. And if anybody's got a surround sound system on their TV at home, whenever this comes on, just turn it up, because it is absolutely amazing. And the special effects and the effect, watching it on the screen has always left a big imprint on me. I absolutely loved that scene, and I loved the film. What about yourself, Richard?
Oh, well, to be honest, I enjoy them all. Even Kingdom of the Crystal Skull has its moments. There are things you think, okay, but I mean, as a franchise, it's fantastic. I do go back and think, well, Raiders is my favourite. There are so many great scenes in all of them, but I mean, the one that sticks in my mind all the time is when they're in the school hall and they're the two Secret Service agents there.
Yes.
And so, the Nazis and the archaeologists they're searching for, and they found Tanis, and they found Tanis. And what does the staff mean in the map room, and explaining that, and what is the Ark of the Covenant, and they get it out of the book.
Yes.
And they're pointing to the picture, and you go, what are these things here? It's lightning, power of God, all of that. And it's just, wow. You kind of really, if you're not drawn into the movie by then, and the opening sequence is astonishing, then that moment it just gets you. Pow, you're in.
It's great atmosphere.
You're hooked.
And Denholm Elliott in that particular part, in that particular scene, is fantastic as well. Actually, it's great part of the film. Love it, love that.
And what was interesting was, of course, Jim Broadbent played the professor in the fourth film, because Denholm Elliott had passed away in the 90s. But apparently I didn't know this at the time, but if you look in the film, you'll see there's a painting in the office, a photograph on Indy's desk, and also a statue out in the grounds of the school of Marcus Brody, of Denholm Elliott. So he kind of appears.
It's a nice touch, isn't it?
He's in all of them too. And there's that great scene, isn't there, in the third one, where they say, Marcus Brody, he's got the book, he's out there, he'll blend in, he'll be invisible.
The master of disguise.
Cut to him. Did anybody speak English?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's enchanting, isn't it? It's lovely.
Yeah.
Lovely.
Wonderful films. And just tremendous escapism. It's wonderful.
Well, that's what we started off with, wasn't it, Richard? It's all about escapism. And for me, it's, I love James Bond. I love Star Wars. Indiana Jones as a character, hard to beat. Hard to beat.
He seems almost more credible, more real, almost you could be him. But some of these other characters are a bit out of reach, but...
Well, some of us probably thought we were him once, but yes.
That was you, wasn't it? I know. But it is just a truly magnificent series. Love it to bits. Fantastic.
Yeah. And I'm really, it's one of those films, again, as we've spoken many times, you can watch again and again and again. And with that 4K restoration package coming along, even though I watched the film just recently, I actually can't wait for July, and I will be getting that 4K DVD set. I'm really looking forward to it.
Do you think if we mention it again, they might send us a free one?
Yes, that'd be good.
We could ask.
Yeah.
Mark, that's been great celebrating Indiana Jones with you. Look forward to our next film franchise, film classic, film anything celebration.
Perfect. Thanks, Richard.
Do tell us what you think and leave some comments down below. And if you enjoyed the video, please do subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to hit that little bell icon to get a notification every time we release a new video. Thanks for watching. See you next time.